looking back over like childhood, like combing over, like doing the inner work and getting over stuff and wanting to find out like where did this fascination with this come from, you know. I look back over my childhood and nostalgia a lot. The 80s and 90s, and these horror movies were huge for me. Still love them. Most of what's coming out today I can't stand. You know, I try to watch it hoping that we'll get a good horror movie, but they're few and far between these days. I feel like
Mm-hmm.
we don't see animatronics and puppets and stuff no more like we did in the 90s, which I loved it. Even if it was just like some, you know, just one, you know, if even if it was poorly done, which there was so much that were done good.
Yeah.
It's just so different than like CGI and stuff. We watched and I can't pronounce this name. We've been pronouncing it different every time we say it. But yesterday with my daughter, I watched The Curse of La Corona or something like that.
Oh,
Um,
okay. Yeah.
which was pretty good. It was a pretty good movie. A lot of jump scares is what they're focusing on now, but I try to trace where this stuff comes from. Even the fascination with the other side and the paranormal and the occult and spirituality or religion or whatever, afterlife. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I had this encounter when I was a kid, man, and I remember it, and I've been thinking about it a lot lately. Like, I remember walking through the neighborhood in Springfield, Louisiana, and we're walking through, and there was this house where these people were moving out of, and it had a bunch of stuff piled up outside. A lot of it was in garbage cans, and we're just, man, we had to be like 8, 9, 10 years old, something in there, 8 or 9, something. And we walked by there, and we started going through the stuff, and there was clothes and a bunch of stuff. That happened a lot. There was like random piles of belongings. On say we just rummaged through it as kids and find that we find Playboys, like you find all kind of
Oh.
stuff. We found this magazine or this book, and I remember it. And we opened it up and we were looking at it, and it was some type of occult book. Like there was a pentagram on it. Don't know the name of it, and it was a bunch of images, a bunch of pictures of demons and crazy. And we're just like little kids, and we found this like, what is this? And
Ooh.
I'm fascinated. You know, I like scary movies and scaring people and stuff, and we're just looking at it. And it felt like we were doing something we wasn't supposed to be doing. There was this one image of like this naked lady on a cross with like a wolf head or whatever.
Oh.
It was like some sadistic pentagrams and baphomets. And I remember one page being of like vampires on a page. It was just crazy stuff. And it felt like we're not supposed to be doing this, you know? And
Yeah.
the house next door, there was a Rottweiler behind the gate, and the gate was a lattice fence, the wood lattice with like the X's or whatever, and
Mm-hmm.
and this dog was barking at us like really loud, aggressively. So we're looking at this book like, what is this? There's like weird paranoia there. Then we look and the dog goes, hoo, 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 like he wants to tear us up. We're like, oh man, this is weird. We didn't know what we should do. Um, all of a sudden, that dog jumps through the lattice, and he
Oh.
busts through the fence. It busts like some like Cujo out of a horror movie or The Sandlot, even jumps through the fence to come to lash at us. But he had a collar on, and his
Mm-hmm.
collar, the chain wasn't long enough to catch us fall, and so it caught his neck, and so this dog is like choking, and while we're holding this satanic book, and we're like little kids, what's going on? And the dog like dies, and we just throw the book down and we run off. And I'm looking back at that, and I remember the movie The Gate. The Gate was one of the first scary movies that kind of opened me up, and there was a scene in there where they kind of did a ritual that summoned these demons and opened these portals unknowingly. Like they did a levitation spell and did a bunch of like a blood sacrifice, like dude cut his hand and touched something, and they did a levitation thing at a party, and they read this book, and it was like it had the tutorial to how to summon these ancient demons. And so I look back at like that experience that I had, and it's like it was almost like this sacrifice that happened while we're holding this book about ritual and sacrifice. And I look back on it, it's like, man, this stuff is crazy, putting two and two together. And like part of me, it's just the wonders of the mind. Like I don't necessarily believe it, but it's like, was that a sacrifice that we took part in somehow, of some entities trying to come through? We had this book, like it's really crazy, man. What would you
That
have
is
any thoughts on that?
Well, the funny thing is that, of course, I look into some of the dark stuff as clear of it as I can, because not because I'm necessarily terrified of it or anything, but I just think, you got to be careful whenever you're messing with the spirit world, because we don't really understand it real well. So I try to be respectful in all of my approaches. But I have learned that, or at least it's claimed, that in satanic circles, one of the things that they allegedly do, especially around ritual sites, is leave objects that are, quote unquote, cursed
Cursed objects,
or
yeah.
or bound, and they try to get people to find them. Of course, there'll be items of some value. Could be a nice knife out in the wilderness near an area where they practice or whatever. Somebody comes along, picks it up, and next thing you know, you got an attachment of some kind. I think there's definitely low vibrational energies. There's definitely evil. I don't know if I subscribe to the idea that there's this omniscient presence of evil. I just think that there's definitely darkness, and that can be manifest in many different ways. But yeah, I think in what you're describing, yeah, it sounds exactly like what happened. I mean, that you're saying that it could be the function of a young mind, but there's circumstances, and then there's circumstantial. I mean, that's definitely into the really creepy area of circumstance to me.
Yeah, it's interesting just to look at like how my life played out and got into these things. And
Mhm.
I mean it what I'm saying, what you focus on becomes your reality. We're
Yes.
talking about manifestation. Like you begin
Mhm.
to believe it, you see it. Like I said, I mean I have so many um encounters at this point, and I trace them all back to this one. The encounter when I was 4, encounter when I was 8. And you look at these different things. Encounter when I was 13. I talked about on your show having literally an entity appear, knock us to the ground. These, like, what that did for me, changed my life forever. Having UFO and alien encounters and feeling like I facilitated it, changed my
Mhm.
life forever. You know what I'm saying? All of these things, and so you start looking for it, and there's like repeatability. And I think that's the, what about that? Repeatability, seances, like we're going to contact the dead, we're going to summon UFOs, which is a big one that I got into. Like when it comes to the paranormal spirits and repeatability, do we need to be careful? That's, you don't contact them, you let them contact you. I've had people, listeners who love the show and love my work, and they're like, they contact me grieving, they lost a child, and they want
Mhm.
to talk to them. They want to tell them they love them. They want to conjure them up, and I'm like, I don't know if you should. Like,
Yeah.
I want to encourage exploration, but I don't know if you should. So people like, you talking to the dead, ghosts or demons, and all this kind of stuff. It's like, we're not supposed to conjure the dead. There's a difference when the dead contacts you, though. Like,
Yeah.
repeatability, conjuring the dead, seances. Where do you stand in all that? Again, we got to be careful, but we don't want to stifle exploration, is what I say. If you enjoyed listening to this podcast segment, be sure to listen to the entire episode by clicking the video to your right. Also, we are on iTunes. You can download the MP3 versions as well. Be sure to subscribe for future episodes.